Ambassador of Angola and Egypt, Mr. Nelson Cosme, Your Excellency, Executive Board Member of Sonangol, Mrs. Katia Ipalanga, distinguished guests, representatives of ministerial departments, dear members of civil society, dear guests, ladies and gentlemen, welcome to the Congo Basin Pavilion at COP27. In order to respond to and help minimize impact resulting from climate change, Angola has implemented several actions for the preservation of the environment in line with the national determined contributions, which include various sectors like industry, energy, waste, agriculture, among others. Today, we will talk about our NDCs and will present Sonangol's Blue Carbon Project, which is an initiative by Ochiva, which is an NGO that is in partnership with the Angolan flagship oil company, Sonangol. The aim of this project is to conserve and restore mangroves in order to benefit vulnerable populations and to contribute to the national strategy for carbon neutrality, along with future action to combat climate change. I would like to invite Her Excellency Secretary of State to the Environment, Mrs. Paula Francisco, to give us our opening speech of this event. Please join your hands.
Bom dia, boa tarde a todos e a todas. Good afternoon, everyone. I didn't mean to speak in English, but do please allow me to speak maybe both languages unless I need help. Obrigada, boa tarde a todos. Temos colegas, membros do pavilhão, convidados, e queria a vossa ajuda para alguém ajudar-me na tradução, rapidamente. Muito obrigada. Mais uma vez, boa tarde a todos.
Once again, good afternoon, everyone.
Excelência, Senhora Embaixador.
Excellency, Mr. Ambassador.
Excelência, nossos administradores aqui presentes.
Excellency to the administrators here present.
Diretores nacionais.
National directors.
Caros colegas e parceiros da Comissão do Fundo Azul da Bacia do Congo.
Dear colleagues and partners for the Commission of the Congo Basin Pavilion.
Digníssimos representantes dos departamentos ministeriais aqui presentes.
Distinguished representatives of the ministerial ministries.
Membros da sociedade civil.
Members of civil society.
Caros presentes.
Dear guests.
Minhas senhoras, meus senhores.
Ladies and gentlemen.
E todo o protocolo observado.
And all the protocol here observing.
Em 2015,
in 2015,
o mundo se uniu e demonstrou vontade de assumir.
The world unified and showed the will to assume
os compromissos necessários que levaram à adoção bem-sucedida do Acordo de Paris.
For the compromises that were necessary to go along with the Paris Accord.
Há ano em Glasgow,
a year ago in Glasgow,
durante a Conferência das Partes,
during the conference of the parties,
a COP26,
COP26,
recomendou-se a todas as nações do mundo,
it was recommended to all nations of the world,
maior ambição na definição de estratégias,
more ambition in the definition of the strategies,
e metas de redução das emissões de gases de efeito estufa.
And objectives to reduce the emissions of GHGs, gas of
sendo desafio a ser seguido e cumprido até 2030.
It's as a challenge to be fulfilled until 2030.
O ano de 2022
2022, sorry.
marca os 30 anos das celebrações do aniversário da adoção da Convenção
marks the 30 years of the celebrated adoptions of the Convention of the UNFCCC
de Estocolmo, na Suécia, até Sharm el-Sheikh.
from Stockholm in Sweden until Sharm el-Sheikh.
O mundo está a percorrer longo caminho
The world is en route to a long way
na luta contra as alterações climáticas
in the fight against climate change
e seus impactos negativos no nosso planeta e nos nossos países.
and its negative impacts in our planet and our countries.
O mundo está a mudar,
The world is changing,
o que quer dizer que nós também precisamos de mudar.
which means that we also need to change.
Mudar a forma como fazemos negócios,
We need to change the way we do business,
mudar os nossos comportamentos diários,
our daily habits,
mudar a nossa forma de pensar e de tomar decisões todos os dias.
and change the way of thinking and to take decision every day.
Minhas senhoras e meus senhores,
Ladies and gentlemen,
Angola irá apresentar a sua NDC
Angola is going to present its NDC,
e já tem a sua estratégia nacional sobre as alterações climáticas.
and it has its national strategy for climate change,
Assim como tem instituído
as well that it has instituted
uma comissão interministerial
an interministerial commission,
que é presidida por Sua Excelência o Presidente da República,
which is presided by His Excellency President of the Republic,
como dos mecanismos operacionais das questões do clima.
as one of the mechanisms with regards to climate.
Assim como temos aprovado
Likewise, we also have approved
pacote legislativo
a legislative packet
que concorre para a implementação das questões relacionadas ao clima a nível nacional.
which contributes to for the implementation of the climate issues.
A Sonangol
Sonangol
teve o grato privilégio de estar presente pela primeira vez na COP26
had the privilege of being for the first time in COP26
através do governo angolano,
with the Angolan government,
tendo assumido naquela altura
assuming at that time
o reforço às iniciativas que têm vindo a implementar
the reinforcement of the initiatives that have been implemented
em torno das alterações climáticas,
around climate change,
uma vez que as atividades que desenvolve
since one of the activities that it applies
estão diretamente relacionadas com o impacto específico, com este impacto específico.
and they're directly linked to this specific impact.
Na altura,
At that time,
orgulhosamente apresentou o projeto Sonangol Carbono Azul,
proudly presented the project Sonangol Blue Carbon
de proteção de ecossistemas de mangais,
for the protection of the ecosystems of mangroves
como forma de gerar créditos de carbono
as a way to create carbon credit
através da proteção e conservação dos mesmos
through the protection and conservation of the mangroves
e compensar as emissões provenientes das suas atividades.
and to compensate the emissions coming from its activities.
Hoje,
Today,
no dia que celebramos a nossa independência,
the day that we celebrate our Independence Day,
com a participação de todos,
with the participation of everyone,
trouxemos a COP27
we bring to COP27
uma principal ou ângulo principal de abordagem
a main angle of action.
a sua visão sobre a necessidade da neutralidade carbônica
It's the need for carbon neutrality,
com referências explícitas de diversas intervenções
with explicit references with diverse interventions
levadas a cabo neste sentido.
that will be taken this direction.
Nesta iniciativa,
In this initiative,
está evidenciada a intenção de Angola,
it is evident of Angola's intention
através da sua petrolífera de bandeira,
through its flagship oil company,
está empenhada em contribuir para atingir os objetivos assumidos no Acordo de Paris,
that is contributing to attaining the objectives that have been assumed for the Paris Agreement,
assim como cumprir na sua íntegra
like in the same way that it wants to fulfill in it as a whole
as medidas de mitigação descritas na NDC do país.
the mitigation measures as they are described in the NDCs of Angola.
Sejam todos bem-vindos ao pavilhão da Bacia do Congo,
Welcome everyone to the pavilion of the Congo Basin.
que acreditamos profundamente que será mais uma oportunidade
We deeply believe that it is one more opportunity
para mostrarmos os esforços que os vários países africanos
to show the work that all the African countries
estão a desenvolver de forma unida
are employing in a united front
contra esta ameaça que é a crise climática,
against the threat that is climate crisis.
e estamos cientes que só conseguiremos superá-la
And we are aware that we can only overcome it
de mãos dadas através de uma ação concertada e implementação efetiva.
hand in hand and in action, in a concerted action to implement it in an effective way.
Declaramos aberto a nossa participação a este evento.
We declare open our participation in this event,
Agradecemos a todos pela atenção dispensada.
and thank you everyone for your attention.
Thank you.
Okay. Next, I would like to call up our National Director for Environment and Climate Action, Mr. Giza Martins, who will make a presentation regarding the national determined contributions. Please, hold a hand for Giza.
Eu vou fazer em português, por favor. Good afternoon, everyone. Thank you for joining us in this event. We've been asked to share with you the national determined contribution that was presented to the UNFCCC for COP26. So counter to others, we have not made an additional update to our NDC. So I will briefly present our emissions profile, which informed our NDC. We'll briefly describe the measures that are included in our national strategy for climate action, and finally have 2 or 3 slides outlining the actions contained in our NDC, which remains valid through 2030. We used as a base year to elaborate our NDC, our inventory of 2005. So the base emissions that we used were the ones that we arrived at through 2005, and this was our emissions profile. This was useful because it helped us determine what sectors were a priority. Where was the lowest hanging fruit in terms of climate action or mitigation of climate action in Angola? And as you will see from our NDC, the energy sector, of course, is an important one, as well as the agriculture sector. So there are our distribution by sector, and these are the sectors that are defined by the guidelines that the IPCC hands down to us. So under energy, it's important to recognize that beyond electricity, um, hydrocarbon production is also included in energy. And LULUCF refers to, of course, land use change, and forestry. Um, so what is Angola's vision for climate action? It is an Angola that is well adapted to the impacts of climate change and that has embarked in a low carbon development pathway in a way that contributes to poverty eradication. So that is what guides national policy making in terms of climate action. How? We've identified 5 pillars. So our strategy has 5 pillars. One is, of course, mitigation to climate change. Adaptation is number 2. Institutional capacity building and technology transfer, climate finance, and finally, research and research, systematic observation, and analysis. What actions did we define as important to take for Angola's climate action? So by pillar, we identified a number of actions that were important for climate action in Angola. For instance, in mitigation, of course, increasing the amount of energy, renewable energy in particular, that is generated in Angola and consumed in Angola is very important and constitutes, the energy sector constitutes the bulk of our mitigation actions. Of course, we do have also forest management, land use, waste management actions included. For adaptation, we looked at such things as sustainable agriculture, introduction of sustainable diets, forests and ecosystem, as well as biodiversity protection, river basin management, and so on. For capacity building, we looked at both institutional capacity building and human capacity building. And throughout those actions that we showed before, both in the mitigation actions and in adaptation actions, there are specific capacity building activities that need to be undertaken. We have a climate finance pillar as well, wherein a number of actions are outlined so as to maximize the mobilization of particularly international resources to be deployed in Angola for climate action, including, of course, carbon markets, as you'll see from F5, so support the authorization of Article 6 of the Paris Agreement and new carbon markets. For research and observation, this specific pillar is dedicated to contributing to strengthening our knowledge about how climate change is impacting social and economic life in Angola. So it has to do with the expansion of observation networks. We're speaking about meteorology here in particular, being able to adjust or downscale climate models to Angola so as to inform policy making, in particular adaptation policy making. Out of the strategy, we also established a number of instruments, so 3 to be specific. Secretary of State mentioned the National Committee for Climate Change and Biodiversity. That is a coordination, it's a policy coordination tool that will assist the implementation process, will monitor the implementation process. But we've also established, most importantly, an MRV system, so a National Monitoring, Report and Verification System that has 4 subsystems within it. One is the inventory system, and this will ensure that we will be gathering the data to be, for us to report, in essence, to the UNFCCC. It will also ensure that with that data, we can devise appropriate or suitable mitigation measures. And the system will also monitor the impact of those measures in Angola policy environment. And then we have 2 additional subsystems. One is the adaptation measures subsystems, and the other one is financial support. It is aimed at, the 4th is aimed at giving us the ability to monitor financial flows into climate action. So a nationally determined contribution. It's in Portuguese. Apologies. Firstly, we had the option of determining an absolute target or relative target. we chose to have a relative target. So our target is to decrease carbon intensity in electricity production in Angola. That is the only specific target that we have in our NDC. Others sectors are covered by our NDC, but electricity production is the only one that enabled us to do a specific target. In terms of gas coverage, it's both it's CO2, so carbon dioxide, methane, and nitric acids, right? Óxidos nitrosos, nitro oxides. Yeah. So that's the gas coverage. In terms of sectors, it's of course the energy sector, the agriculture sector, waste, industrial processes, and land use change and forestry again. And of course, this corresponds to the emissions profile that informed the elaboration of our NDC. So that is what we estimate we will achieve both conditionally and unconditionally with our NDC. It's a deviation by 35% of the emission trajectory, 35% by 2030 unconditional, again using the year of 2005 as the base year. And then we could reduce an additional 15% by 2015, by 2030, conditional upon support. And this support would be particularly applicable to those sectors in which we were not able to define specific targets, such as forestry, waste management, and industrial processes. So again, the sectors or the objectives of the NDC, unconditional activities are the promotion of renewable energy. We have some activities related to reducing the flaring of emissions associated with the gas, with the oil industry, and of course large hydro projects. In the agriculture and forestry sector is reforestation, afforestation activities, as well as the mangrove restoration and conservation activities that will be presented shortly hereafter. Thank you very much.
So, thank you very much, Mr. Giza. Next, I would like to invite everyone to watch a small video presentation that Sonangol has brought for us about the Sonangol Blue Carbon Project. Desio, help. Unfortunately, we have a few limitations with the sound system, but we have the legend in writing. Our apologies for the lack of sound. We have a few limitations in that regard, as I said before. Finally, I would like to invite Mr. Marco Romero, which is an aerospace engineer and member of the Ochiva NGO that we presented in the video here, to present and tell us a little bit more about the Sonangol Blue Carbon project.
Thank you very much. I don't know if you can hear me properly. Thank you. I'm really glad to be here on behalf of Fernanda to present what is really the Sonangol Blue Carbon project, one of the pioneer programs that we have that are really in line of what all those strategies and all those demands of the country in terms of net zero goals and on the ground, taking it to a more operational level. What are really the milestones and the strategic milestones? I will define the project, and after we are in line on what is the project and what are mangroves and the importance of mangroves in our perspective, I will guide you, or we will go into a journey of all the steps we are taking until now to implement the project, all the actions, and every action as a reaction, we will see what are the results that we could achieve so far with the implementation of the Sonangol Blue Carbon project. Because the main goal, the ultimate goal of that project is really go and acquire carbon credits for the project, one of the pioneer projects we have in Angola for the carbon certification. We are going into one of the most well-known international certification, Plan Vivo. I will explain right after what is it. And the blue carbon has that same goal. First, by protecting biodiversity, by giving back a sustainable way for communities to live from mangroves, to live from fishing, to live from the seafood that mangroves can really provide as the nursery of the biodiversity. We will, at the end, create sustainability for, by protecting and conserving those mangroves. With that, we are reducing poverty, and we are building this resilience not only economically, but also environmental resilience. So, we are opposite to terrestrial forestry. Mangroves are the transition between the land and the sea. Those coastal zones, those basins, bays, lagoons, and estuaries are the geographical habitats of mangroves. With that particularity, mangroves, as they have the specificity of being one of the nurseries of the biodiversity. We can have right there more than 60% of the marine biodiversity. We're counting on migratory birds. We are counting on crustaceans. We're counting on a lot of fish that are not only a natural way to fight climate change, but are also a way to improve the quality of life of the communities that live on that coastal zone. And by having those mangroves, we are also having a natural protection, a barrier. When the sea level rises, when we have storms or strong winds, the mangroves are the best way to damp all those environmental phenomena. And mangroves, they have also a particularity of being the mean of subsistence of all those coastal communities that really live only from the rich biodiversity that I've already mentioned. And why are mangroves so important for the carbon process, for the carbon sink, for the carbon accreditation, or the way we deal of the reduction or compensation of the emissions? Because they have a simple particularity. Plants, leaves, they need and they eat carbon. The same carbon we produce and the same oxygen we need to breathe is the one that the leaves of the mangroves are released. And mangrove trees, they can store and sequestrate 3 to 4 times more carbon dioxide than terrestrial forests. That's why we are going and we have way more, we are focusing way more on mangroves for achieving those milestones that were mentioned before. And this is why a few years ago, the national flag company for oil and gas really entered in that domain by investing and putting all the efforts on trying to sequestrate carbon on 3 different provinces of Angola. The main one where we started was Luanda, with approximately 900 hectares of mangroves in that province. We allocate a specific administrative and political zone, that one of the communities, to really start that project of engaging, empowering communities, and at the end of all this, taking the credits of the carbon to maintain that sustainability of life for that community. And this is one of the main contributions that really Sonangol and Ojiva are trying to give to the national efforts of really targeting to net zero, of really trying to fight climate change. After that, we've started with Bengo, with some motivation programs, and the third step of that process will be really going to Namib and start having from that region a compensation or a reallocation of the capability of sequestration and storage of carbon in the biodiversity of that zone. Talking about the main step, the first step that we've implemented, the community where the project started with the community of Tapo, Farol, in Luanda. It's just geographical context of that zone. You can see through all that interior coastal zone is one of the 11 Ramsar sites that Angola has already submitted to the International Convention of Ramsar. And this is the one that we call the Flamingo Bag. In that Flamingo Bag, that community is responsible to save and to make the surveillance of almost 200 hectares of mangroves. That capability or that amount of mangroves are really under the domain and under the responsibility not only of Ochiva and Sonangol, but also from all those 400 citizens of the community, because they are the ones taking way more benefit than the ones that are really implementing and empowering them to do the change, to really make the difference for climate change. That's why we started by identifying what are really the lags and the gaps that we need to fulfill, that we need to solve on the communities, because all the process of climate change and carbon creditation is really an effort to create socioeconomic benefits. We call it the ecosystemic service on the jargon of the carbon credits. That's why we've identified that particular community don't have schools. The students there, they need to walk at least 5 kilometers per day to get access to the nearest school. They don't have the basic, they didn't have the basic sanitary conditions before the start of the project. That's why the project first started to make all that effort to really overcome all those issues they were fighting. Because when they face the biggest problems of their social economic context on the community, they will not even care about the mangrove protections. That's why the groundbreak work was really educating, empowering, and solving the main problems of that community. And the problems identified so far were like the education of the community at the beginning of the project. It was we had and faced a solid waste management process or problem where the community just, because they didn't realize the importance of waste, not only to give a revenue for them, but also to improve their quality of life, they deliver and they deposit all their waste on the mangroves. They start cutting mangroves, but how can we tell them to stop cutting mangroves without giving them an alternative? This is what we started doing when we've done the intervention on the community. A part of that, a lot of the constructions that I've been doing on the ground, they were putting pressure on mangroves because they were occupying. We've done a study, and from the past 10 years, we found and we detect a slight change on the land usage of that community. And this is because not only the constructions, but other different infrastructures. At the beginning of the project, the two main problems we had were the illegal fishing or an unsustainable fishing of the communities, because they had to survive, and they had to also hunt the migratory birds that are that has the mangroves as their main habitat. But we had to come with the solutions. The main power of a nation, the main power of a community, the main power of a group of people is really the education and awareness. That's why we engage with every single citizen of that community, creating educational programs, engaging with the kids at the schools, giving them the importance of changing their way of treating and protecting and dealing with mangroves. They started from a theoretical perspective, all that conversation with the local authorities, with the main responsibles of the communities, up to what you can see there, the cleaning campaigns. They've been several campaigns, and you'll see exactly the outcomes of all those campaigns. They were done by different groups and departments of Sonangol and other companies that volunteered themselves to join communities, and all together they started not only cleaning but also reforestating mangroves right after. It's just a very huge teamwork effort, a very good way to engage people with the community, to engage people within themselves, because when they are there, they are really doing the job of changing the world, and not only talking, they are taking action, and they are really realizing how they can fight climate change through those small actions. But it's not only an operational approach. We need, and we saw from the previous presentations, that we need to bring science to the equation. We need to monitor. We need to know what we are protecting. And this is why we also engage with the community, with the academic community. We bring students nearby to do their internships on the biodiversity cataloging. We bring together different scientists to do air and space monitoring of those regions. We build even infrastructures with the students and researchers to monitor in situ the data, to calibrate and to reinforce the remote data that we have. At the end, all those actions are in vain if we go home, because the community was still there. So we need to deliver that capability to the community. That's what we thought at the beginning, and we start making this capacity building and empowering the community. That's why we created that model, the model of the guardians of the mangroves. We select among all the communities the most active members of the community, because they are traditional authorities. They are members that really the community can really listen to them. A part of like having us that we are outsiders of the community. That's why we empower them. We give all them the tools. Those community members, they have now the capability to catalog and study and know every one of the types of mangroves there. They are able to manage geospatial data to monitor all those regions. And this is what we are bringing together as a different model on the scientific community who are bringing indigenous knowledge with science and technology to solve the problem of mangrove protection. And this is why we could achieve so far those results, almost 6,500 hectares of land restored by mangrove planting. Let's give you a number of, through all those 4 campaigns, we've been able to plant almost 200,000 seeds of mangroves. They take time to grow, but as we monitor, as we can forecast their capability to achieve the plans Dr. Shiza mentioned before, we can really calculate the ratio. If we know 1 hectare of mangrove can really sink from 1,500 to 2,200,000 of CO2 equivalent, if we are planting this amount of seeds in that area, we forecast that per year we could have the quantity, we have 14 to 15 million tons of carbon being stored and being sequestrated by that program only on that province. We have 3 of them. We have different emissions. We saw a little bit of our profile of emissions, but at least is the contribution that that project is really giving to the national efforts. It's really not only the straightforward compensation and balance of emissions and carbon sink, but also the capability of creating that added value to the community, to really have those benefits in line of what is the reality of the project. We so far could see with ourselves, with our eyes, with the tools that we could apply on the mangroves, that mangrove can really be that machine of storing and really taking carbons from the atmosphere. And when we do this, we're also not taking tons of carbons from the atmosphere, but we are also reducing climate change catastrophes. If we don't have storms, if we don't have floods, if we don't have, if we have the reduction of the annual precipitation, is thanks to all those efforts that we are doing in very different ways with very different institutions. Just about to close, just to end you, sorry, just, yeah, just to finish, I'm so sorry, apologize. As I mentioned before, the all effort ends in a certification, ends in ecosystemic services, ecosystemic service that really bring back the revenue, bring back the effort that we are applying. And we select among different certification standards. The Plan Vivo is a plan that fits our requirements of area of less than 200 hectares of mangroves. And by having a small area of mangroves, we have a more flow, we have a better flow of the process. We have a fastest process of certification and verification. Because what we've done so far was having that assessment of the socioeconomic state of the community and providing to the certification entity the information that that community can really save mangroves, can protect, and that area will be maintained, will not be deforested. This is what we could prove so far to the certification entity. The next steps will be giving to the certification entity the capability or showcasing our capability to monitor that area, to maintain that area, and really at the end of the day, so they can give us the right amount of money that can compensate or that can bring back to the community the right amount of sustainability they need to, to do their job, to live their lives in a very better manner, and to improve their quality of life. In a nutshell, was what I was meant to present. I hope you all could understand, and I'm here thanking you all for your attention and available for any question you have. Thank you very much.
Yeah. Thank you very much, Marco, for that splendid presentation. We now open the floor for questions. Does anyone like to make any questions regarding this presentation? Okay. Well, in any case, we will be around, and so will Marco. So if anybody would like to discuss further issues regarding this lovely project, Marco will be around to happily answer them, I'm sure. Thank you very much. Yes. Okay. And with this, we close our session for today, and we'd like to thank everybody for their attention. There are a few flyers that we've been putting up there with the rest of the schedules and the presentations for the rest of the week. Please be free to pick one up and be informed about the other topics that will be presented here in this pavilion. Thank you very much.